We hear this morning in the gospel, when they hand you over, do not worry about what you are to speak or what you are to say. For what you are to say will be given to you at that time. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. The Spirit of God speaking through us. In those times where we need it, those times where we need to hear those words, those times where we're not sure what to say, and God gives us what we need to say in those times. Now, sometimes it's very obvious that God is speaking through us. For example, I knew a man whose name was Frank, who was a staunch atheist. He was very firm that he did not believe in God. His wife, however, was a very devout believer. But she never asked him to go to church with him. She never asked him to do anything to change his faith. And one day, since Frank was a very good golfer, the priest at his wife's church asked if he'd come out and play a few rounds with him. And Frank, being staunch, being not wanting anything to do with the church, said no, absolutely not. And then his wife, for once in their marriage, broke down and cried and said, "Frank, the man just wants to play golf with you." So Frank was taken aback and did the wise thing and went out and played golf with this priest. And while they were out there, this priest said to him, "Frank, what is it that you have an issue with? Is it the resurrection? Is that what you have a problem with?" And those words stuck with Frank. They didn't have an immediate effect. But they did have enough of an effect that one day he was passing by a church and he went in. And it was there that he was able to say, "Yes, Lord, I believe." Frank actually went on and became a priest. And it was during a Christian formation class that he was leading that I heard him tell this story. I think one of the most powerful parts is that after this happened, after he went in and had accepted God in his life, he went back to this priest and told him about what happened. The priest said to him, "Frank, I don't remember saying those words to you." So that's one time that we can clearly see God working, God giving this priest the right words to say to work in Frank's heart. But there are times, I think in all of our lives, where we don't feel this sense. We feel like we ask for God to come in to give us those words, and He doesn't. One of those times for me, several of those times for me, have been through my discernment process, my process in getting ready to accept God's call to ordain ministry. Every time I went through my parish, the diocese. I went in with this verse that we heard this morning in mind. With, okay, God, please give me the right words to say. Let me not say something stupid. Let me say what I need to say to get through this process smoothly. Every time I was told, "You're a little young, go do something else. You need to do something different, and come back later." So I end every time hearing this, I felt like a failure. I felt like I hadn't prayed enough. I wasn't doing something right. That I was failure. But the thing is, I was looking at the issue all wrong. I was looking at it from my perspective. What was going to make it easier for me? What was going to make it better for me? I wasn't looking at what God was working in my life. Because for one thing, no one ever said you're not called to ministry. In fact, every time I went through the process, that was affirmed. It just, not yet, not yet. So that was one thing that I should have been paying a little bit more attention to. But also, I wasn't looking at what God was working through that. What I thought was a failure. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe God was putting into the hearts of other people what he wanted to. I can't say. But I can say that God was taking what I saw as a failure, what I saw as something lacking on my part, and using it as a tool to strengthen me, just as a person, but also in my ministry. So if I had been told to wait first time, I wouldn't have gotten an opportunity to work for City. Now, some of you have heard me talk about City Year a lot, and some of you haven't. City Year is an AmeriCorps program. I worked with them in D.C., and they specifically take young people, 18 to 24-year-olds, and put them in schools, in struggling schools, to be tutors and mentors to the students there. And there's a lot of team building for this process. There's a lot of camaraderie that you have to build. And it was a very, oftentimes difficult process for me. It was a very difficult program to be involved in. But because you're having to get up and talk about yourself a lot, City Year has networked to folks. There was one time we were in the mall in Washington, D.C., and I was one of the folks who was doing a debrief right there in front of everybody, in front of anybody who came by to see us, part of this huge group. And through that process, I gained a lot of friends. I've learned a lot of what that means, what friendship means. And I also became a more outgoing, because I was forced to be, a more outgoing person. And I think because of that, stronger, more self-assured person as well. So that was one of the benefits I got from waiting. Second time I was told to wait, I got an offer from my mentor, Heidi Kenner, who some of you here will remember from when she preached for my ordination at this church. And Heidi gave me the opportunity to go out and serve under her as an intern for a year in Helena, Montana. And that was a big experience for me too. It was another great way to get out of my comfort zone, be in an area I didn't really know much about, except my grandfather had a ranching business out over there. And I basically helped out with everything. Helped out, started a young adults program, helped out with the youth group, so much so that I was there recently for their graduation for some of the kids in that group. Helped out leading classes, Bible studies, you name it. Preached about twice a month, too. If it weren't for that experience, I wouldn't have had a lot of the tools, particularly preaching, that I have now. I wouldn't have had those tools that I now use daily, weekly in my ministry. They say hindsight is 20/20. And I think that was very much the case for me in the process. At the time, I thought I was failing. I thought I wasn't praying enough. I didn't think God was with me. But looking back, I can see that I was being equipped with the tools I needed. God was using what I thought was a failure to strengthen me. And I really do believe that all those tools, all those events that happened, were part of the reason that I ended up being led to St. Paul's, to this church, to be with all of y'all. So the point of the gospel lesson today, the point of these words, that God will give us the words that we need when we need them, isn't that we ask God for something, He waves His magic hands, and all of a sudden we have everything that we want. It's that God is going to be there with us, to give us what we need to serve Him better. That God will be there even when things seem difficult, even when it seems like everything is against us. And He will be there to lead us to the path of life and resurrection. There's another thing that we get from the gospel this week, and it's that the harvest is plentiful, but the harvesters are few. We're all called to be in some ministry in our lives. We're all called through our baptismal vows to be ministers in Christ's church in whatever way that God has called us to do that. And so if the fear of what people are going to say to you, the fear of not being able to say the right things at the right time is what's keeping you from more fully committing to that ministry, don't fear. There may be times that people don't listen to you. There may be difficult times that you have to go through. But at the end of the day, whatever happens, God is still leading you to that path of life and resurrection. That path of hope that we hear about in Romans this morning. That no matter what we go through, we still have the hope in Christ Jesus, and the hope that He is there to be with us, no matter